One other really common thing that we're going to have to do in a chemistry class is to convert between temperatures. And there's no real good dimensional analysis way to do this. It's just straight up algebra quite often. So first of all, let's just talk about kind of the two metric units that we're going to be using, which is Celsius and Kelvin. Quite honestly, if we were in like a Chem 200 level or a Chem 104 or something like that, definitely in Chem 105, we would need to talk a whole bunch more about kelvins. I'm not going to show you any conversions just because it's pretty simple to take a Celsius and turn it into a Kelvin. You pretty much take the Celsius temperature and you add 273. Okay, that's it. If you're given a Kelvin temperature, you subtract 273. There's a couple of examples of this on the resource guides that I provided, but in this class, that's not going to be terribly helpful. What is going to be helpful, however, is instead of using Kelvin, is to have some way to convert to the world's dumbest measure, which is Fahrenheit. I should probably check to make sure I spelled that right. By some miracle, I spelled something right for the first time in my life. Woohoo! So, the conversion for this guy, by the way, I'll always give this to you. You never have to memorize it. It's a real waste of time. But if you ever need to convert between degrees Celsius and degrees Fahrenheit, it's helpful to know this relationship. As I said, I'll always give it to you. Don't worry too much about it if you don't know this. But all this means is that if I'm given a Celsius, I can plug in the Celsius here straight up and end up with a Fahrenheit temperature. If I have to get a Celsius temperature from a Fahrenheit, sure, I could just use this, but I'll show you how you can kind of rearrange this thing to something a little more understandable. Just in case you guys hear panting in the video, as I'm not panting, it's that I'm being visited by a couple of more class members who's trying to stop eating, trying to eat my mic. Okay, so this is from that temperature conversion worksheet that once again is available under the resource guide section of Canvas. We're going to take this 10 degrees Celsius and convert it into Fahrenheit, given our equality right here. And this one is what we just call a pure-on chug and plug. We're going to take our 10 degrees Celsius and plug it into here and see what happens. Waldo's really excited about this, either that or the fact I need to take him for a walk. Ta-da! So, if you get a 10 degrees Celsius and you happen to be up in Canada, now you get to be able to convert that very easily into a Fahrenheit temperature. Woohoo! Well, what happens for the very next section? Okay, so this is from number 9, that same exact worksheet. What we're going to do here is take 80 degrees Fahrenheit, convert it into degrees Celsius. What we'll need is the same exact equation that we saw before. The only problem is that now we need to solve for a degree Celsius and plug in a degrees Fahrenheit. And of course, if you feel comfortable with it, you can just plug that in there and do all your algebra. I like to do all my algebra first with the variables, and then I plug in the numbers later. So, just as a reminder from math class, you got to be crazy to be a math teacher. We end up with this. And what we're going to do is to get rid of that 9/5, we're going to multiply both sides by 5/9. That's going to cancel out. And so what we're left with is the fact that we've got degrees Celsius equals 5/9 times whatever I get here. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm a little bit of an idiot because it turns out that that was actually given, that exact equation or very close to it was given to you on the resource guide. But hey, I've already did it. Might as well include that. You're welcome for that extra bit of knowledge. So we're going to plug in 80 here. Minus 32. All multiplied by 5/9. Whatever is in parentheses, you got to do first. Order of operations kind of thing. And hopefully I don't do any kind of board brain here. But I get 48 from that. And then we're going to multiply that by 5/9. And let's see what our calculator gives us. Okay, well, if you can see it with all the shadows in this room, I've got 26.7 degrees Celsius, and that was equivalent to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, I would suggest kind of a sniff test on that. If you remember a couple of the values I recommend that you guys know, the fact that body temperature, right, which we know is 98.6 in Fahrenheit, is like around 37 degrees Celsius. Room temperature is right around 20 degrees Celsius, so that's a little warmer than room temperature. So yeah, that sniffs right? That probably is correct.